In the deep, nocturnal forests of Maryland, a person appears, moving quietly through the darkness. Harriet Tubman, her name spoken with great respect by those who dare to envision a life free, maneuvers through the thick vegetation with the expertise of an experienced tracker. Born into captivity around 1822, she was familiar with the severe restraints of slavery, yet she carried within her a flame, a determination that grew stronger with every night. In 1849, confronted with the imminent threat of being separated from her family and the constant risk of capture, Harriet decided to take a bold step, to overcome the challenges and escape. Driven by an unwavering belief and a firm determination, she set off on a dangerous journey towards the north. Her escape was not merely a personal victory, it marked the beginning of a remarkable story of bravery and defiance. However, Harriet's tale did not conclude with her own liberation. Against all odds, she returned to the South, risking her life to guide others towards the freedom they sought. Utilizing the secret network of the Underground Railroad, she conducted daring rescues, navigating dangerous routes and evading those who chased her. Every secret mission was a demonstration of her bravery and cleverness, challenging the very foundations of slavery and sparking hope in the hearts of those oppressed. Harriet Tubman became a living legend, a beacon of resistance, a source of hope in the face of oppression. Her story echoes through the annals of history, a testament to the strength of bravery and conviction against oppression. Harriet Tubman's legacy continues as a reminder that one person's unyielding spirit can light the way to freedom and justice for future generations. Birth and family. Harriet Tubman, who was originally named Araminta Minty Ross, came from a family of enslaved people. Her parents, Rit and Ben Ross, were owned by Mary Pattison Brodess, who later passed the ownership to her son Edward. Ben Ross was part of Anthony Thompson's estate, which was a large plantation near the Blackwater River in Dorchester County, Maryland. The exact year and location of Harriet Tubman's birth are not known for certain, a common situation for many enslaved people in the United States. Harriet herself mentioned 1825 as her birth year, but her death record indicates 1815, and her headstone lists 1820. Historian Kate Larson's research in 2004, which included evidence of a midwife's payment and ads for runaway slaves, suggests 1822 as a likely birth year, a detail that is supported by later accounts. Harriet Tubman's grandmother, Modesty, came to the U.S. on a slave ship from Africa, but little else about her background is recorded. Harriet grew up learning she had Ashanti heritage, though this claim has not been confirmed. Her mother, Rit, might have had a white father and worked as a cook for the Brodess family. Ben Ross was skilled in the timber trade on Thompson's plantation. Rit and Ben got married around 1808 and had 9 children together: Lina, Mariah Ritty, Soph, Robert, Minty, Harriet, Ben, Rachel, Henry, and Moses. Rit constantly worried about her family being separated by slavery. Edward Brodess sold 3 of Rit's daughters, permanently splitting the family. When a trader from Georgia tried to buy Rit's youngest son, Moses, she hid him with the help of other enslaved people and freedmen in the area. Rit courageously stood up to Brodess to stop the sale, famously threatening him with violence if he came near her home. Brodess eventually gave in and dropped the sale. This event deeply affected Harriet Tubman, leading her to develop a strong belief in fighting against the cruelty of slavery, a belief that influenced her future endeavors and legacy. Childhood. Tubman's mother was made to work in a large estate, leaving little time for her own children. Consequently, young Harriet had to take on adult roles for her younger siblings, including caring for a baby, a common duty in large enslaved households. At just 5 or 6 years old, she was employed by a woman named Miss Susan as a nursemaid, where her responsibilities included comforting the baby and lulling it to sleep, but she also faced severe punishments for the baby's cries, enduring beatings that left lasting scars. She remembered one instance of receiving 5 lashes before breakfast, a harsh reminder of the abuse she faced. During her early years, Tubman also worked for a plantation owner named James Cook, who had her check muskrat traps in the nearby marshes even while she was recovering from measles. Her sickness became so severe that Cook sent her back to Brodess, where her mother looked after her until she got better. Despite these challenges, Tubman fought deep homesickness, comparing herself to "the boy on the Swanee River," a nod to Stephen Foster's song, "Old Folks at Home." As she grew older and more resilient, her duties expanded to include working in the fields, driving oxen, plowing, and moving logs. In her teenage years, Tubman suffered a severe head injury when an overseer threw a 2-pound metal weight meant for a slave escaping but hit Tubman instead, breaking her skull. Left bleeding and unconscious for 2 days, she was left unattended before being brought back to her enslaver's home. This injury caused her to suffer from debilitating headaches, seizures, and periods where she appeared unconscious yet was conscious of her surroundings. Medical professionals believe she might have developed temporal lobe epilepsy or another neurological condition due to this trauma. After this traumatic event, Tubman began to have visions and vivid dreams, which she interpreted as messages from God. These spiritual experiences deeply influenced her character, instilling a strong and unshakable faith. Despite not being able to read, Tubman learned Bible stories from her mother, and likely attended Methodist services with her family, finding strength and guidance in the stories of deliverance from the Old Testament. Her religious beliefs motivated her to take a stand against slavery and injustice throughout her life, rejecting the passive teachings of white preachers and adopting a proactive approach. Family and marriage. Anthony Thompson had made a vow to set free Tubman's father when he was 45 years old. After Thompson's passing, his son fulfilled this vow in 1840. Tubman's father, liberated from slavery, went on to work as a timber estimator and foreman for the Thompson family. In the 1840s, Tubman took active measures by paying a white lawyer $5, which is equivalent to $160 in 2023, to look into her mother Rit's legal situation. The attorney found a provision in Ethel Pattison's will, the ancestor of Mary Brodess, that stated Rit and her children would be set free at 45 years old. Additionally, any children born to Rit after reaching this age would also be born free. However, the Pattison and Brodess families disregarded these conditions upon gaining control of the enslaved family. For Tubman, trying to enforce this clause through legal means was impossible. In about 1844, Harriet Tubman married John Tubman, a man who was already free. Although there is limited information available about their relationship, their marriage was complicated by Harriet's status as an enslaved woman. According to the laws of the time, the legal status of a child was determined by that of its mother, meaning any children of Harriet and John would be born into slavery. Such unions between free people of color and enslaved individuals were common on Maryland's eastern shore, where a large part of the black population was free. Many African American families, including Harriet's, had members who were both free and enslaved. Historian Kate Larson suggests that Harriet and John Tubman might have had plans to buy Harriet's freedom. Shortly after her marriage, Harriet decided to take the name Harriet, leaving behind her birth name, Araminta. The exact date of this name change is not clear, but it happened around significant times in Harriet's life, possibly related to her escape plans from slavery or her religious conversion. By adopting her mother's name, Harriet paid tribute to her family connections and established her identity in the face of the hardships of slavery. Escape from slavery. In 1849, Harriet Tubman once more fell ill, reducing her appeal to slave traders. Edward Brodess, annoyed by her diminished value, tried to sell her but was unsuccessful in finding a buyer. Fuming over Brodess's disregard and his continued enslavement of her family, Tubman turned to prayer, imploring God for a change in his heart. She prayed intensely throughout the night, even as potential buyers came to see her. As a sale seemed imminent, her prayers shifted to ask for divine help if Brodess's heart remained unchanged. Miraculously, Brodess died within a week, leaving Tubman with complex feelings about her earlier appeals. Brodessa's death only worsened Tubman's situation. In the process of settling his estate, the chances of Tubman and her family being sold and separated grew. Brodessa's widow, Eliza, began the process of selling the enslaved individuals under her care. Determined not to wait for fate to decide her fate, Tubman decided to take matters into her own hands. Despite her husband's attempts to dissuade her, she declared, "There was only one of two things I had a right to, freedom or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." On September 17, 1849, Tubman and her brothers, Ben and Henry, seized their opportunity for freedom. They escaped from bondage, having been employed by Anthony Thompson on his plantation in Poplar Neck, Caroline County. Although their initial absence might not have been noticed by Eliza Brodess due to their status as hired workers, she eventually issued a runaway notice offering a large reward for their capture. Unfortunately, Tubman's brothers changed their minds and decided to return, leaving Tubman to accompany them. Undeterred, Tubman made a bold solo escape sometime in October or November. Before departing, she subtly signaled her intentions with a farewell song, indicating her plans to other slaves. Utilizing the Underground Railroad, a network of supporters including free and enslaved black individuals, white abolitionists, and Quakers, Tubman began a dangerous journey northward. Guided by the North Star, she traveled at night, hiding during the day in known woods and marshes to avoid capture. Her exact path is unknown, but she likely went through Quaker communities in Preston, Maryland, before heading northeast along the Choptank River and into Delaware. Then northward into Pennsylvania, a journey of nearly 90 miles on foot, lasting from 5 to 3 weeks. Tubman depended on the generosity of strangers who provided shelter and assistance along her journey, using various tactics to evade slave catchers who were after the rewards for captured fugitives. Crossing into Pennsylvania was a moment of profound freedom and relief for Tubman. Looking back on the experience later in life, she described a transcendent feeling, as if she had stepped into a heavenly realm where the sun's rays cast the world in a golden light, a testament to her unwavering bravery and faith in the face of adversity. Nicknamed Moses. When Harriet Tubman arrived in Philadelphia, she was thrust into a world she had never known. Thinking of her family still held captive in Maryland, she said, "My father, mother, brothers, sisters, friends, and I were all in Maryland. But I was free, and they should be free." With a strong desire to bring her family out of bondage, Tubman started saving every penny from the various odd jobs she did in Philadelphia and Cape May, New Jersey. However, her efforts were quickly thwarted by the enactment of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 by the U.S. Congress. This harsh law forced law enforcement to assist in capturing escaped slaves, even in states where slavery was illegal. It also imposed harsh punishments on those who helped runaway slaves, making it riskier for those seeking safety in free states like Pennsylvania. Many escaped slaves, fearing capture and severe punishments, sought refuge in southern Ontario, where slavery had been abolished. Meanwhile, racial tensions in Philadelphia grew as poor Irish immigrants competed with free blacks for jobs. In December 1850, Tubman was devastated to learn that her niece Keziah and her children were going to be sold in Cambridge, Maryland. Without a moment's hesitation, Tubman made her way to Baltimore, where her brother-in-law Tom Tubman provided her shelter until the auction day. Keziah's husband, John Bowley, a free black man, cleverly bought his wife's freedom by winning the auction. While the auctioneer took a lunch break, Bowley and Keziah, along with their children, quietly escaped to a nearby safe house. Under the cover of night, Bowley led his family 60 miles by log canoe to Baltimore, where Tubman was waiting to take them to Philadelphia. In early 1851, Tubman set out on another perilous journey back to Maryland, this time to rescue more family members. During this mission, she successfully freed her youngest brother, Moses, and 2 other men who were seeking liberty. Her acts of bravery were soon known among her family and community, boosting her confidence with each rescue mission. Towards the end of the year, Tubman returned to Dorchester County, Maryland, for the first time since her own escape. Her goal was now to find her husband, John. Upon her return, she found that John had remarried to Caroline and was happy in his new life. Despite her feelings of disappointment and suppressed anger, Tubman remained steadfast in her mission to help others achieve freedom. She gathered a group of enslaved individuals eager to escape and led them to Philadelphia, determined to continue her fight against the injustice of slavery. In light of the heightened risks associated with the fugitive slave law in the northern parts of the United States, numerous fugitives sought safety in southern Ontario, a region where slavery had been officially ended. In December 1851, Harriet Tubman led a band of 11 fugitives, which presumably included the bullies and others she had previously saved, on a journey back to freedom. Historical accounts indicate that Tubman and her group might have found a place to stay at Frederick Douglass's residence, a well-known abolitionist and a former slave himself. Both Douglass and Tubman held a deep admiration for each other's commitment to ending slavery. Douglass once remarked, "The majority of my efforts and sufferings for our cause have been in the open, and I have often been encouraged along the way. You, however, have worked quietly. I have done my work during the day, you, at night. The night sky and the quiet stars have stood as witnesses to your dedication to freedom and your bravery." Between 1851 and 1862, Tubman embarked on numerous dangerous journeys back to the eastern shore of Maryland, rescuing around 70 slaves in roughly 13 missions. Her rescues included her brothers Henry, Ben, and Robert, along with their spouses and some of their children. She also provided detailed guidance to assist another 50 to 60 enslaved individuals escape to freedom. Tubman's incredible courage earned her the nickname Moses, comparing her to the biblical figure who led the Hebrews out of Egypt. One of her last missions into Maryland was to bring her elderly parents to safety. Although her father had bought her mother's freedom from Eliza Brodess in 1855, their existence remained in danger in their home area. In 1857, Tubman was notified of a serious threat to her father's freedom for aiding 8 escapees. Without delay, she led her parents north to St. Catharines, Canada, where a community of ex-slaves had settled, including other relatives and friends of Tubman. This journey represented another milestone in Tubman's relentless fight for freedom and justice. Routes and methods. Harriet Tubman's bold actions demanded both intelligence and bravery. She chose to operate during the winter, taking advantage of the darkness and chill to blend in. She meticulously planned her getaways, starting them on Saturday evenings to dodge the attention of newspapers until Monday. Using smart disguises, Tubman once wore a hat and carried live chickens to look like she was doing chores. When suddenly facing a former slave owner, she used the chickens to distract him, avoiding being caught with her quick reflexes. In an 1897 conversation with historian Wilbur Siebert, Tubman shared important allies and safe spots along the Underground Railroad. She found shelter with Sam Green, a free African-American minister in East New Market, Maryland, and stayed close to her parents' house at Poplar Neck. Her path led her north through Delaware, with the help of free African-American agents like William and Nat Brinkley and Abraham Gibbs. They guided her through Dover, Smyrna, and Blackbird, helping her cross the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal to Newcastle and Wilmington. In Wilmington, Quaker Thomas Garrett arranged for transport to William Still's office or other Underground Railroad networks in Philadelphia, where many found protection in New York, New England, or southern Ontario. Tubman's steadfast belief was a key to her endurance. Even after suffering from visions from a childhood head injury, she saw them as messages from God, often seeking guidance and safety. Quaker Thomas Garrett once said, "I never encountered anyone of any race who had more trust in the voice of God, as it came directly to their soul." Her spirituals acted as secret signals during dangerous trips, indicating when it was safe to proceed or when to be cautious, by changing the lyrics of songs like "Go Down Moses." Armed with a revolver for protection against slave hunters and threats to shoot anyone who hesitated or turned back, Tubman ensured the safety and order of the escapees. She famously stood up to a man who was reluctant to continue, making him stay, which helped keep the group secure. Despite facing increased suspicion and a falsely exaggerated reward, Tubman and the fugitives she led never ended up in jail. Her enduring legacy is often noted, saying, "I was the leader of the Underground Railroad for 8 years. And I can say what very few leaders can say, I never let my train derail and I never lost a passenger." John Brown and Harper's Ferry. In April 1858, Harriet Tubman met John Brown, a passionate supporter of violent means to end slavery in the United States. Despite her initial reservations about armed rebellion, Tubman sided with Brown's direct strategy and backed his mission. Both Tubman and Brown believed in a higher purpose and felt protected by divine intervention against slave owners' revenge. Tubman even claimed to have had a prophetic vision predicting her encounter with Brown before it happened. Brown, impressed by Tubman's tactical skills and extensive knowledge of support networks in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware, referred to her as General Tubman and asked for her assistance in organizing a rebellion against slavery. Although other abolitionists, like Frederick Douglass, opposed Brown's aggressive methods, Brown aimed to incite a revolt to create a new state for liberated slaves, meticulously planning for military operations. He assigned Tubman the task of gathering former slaves from southern Ontario to join his planned force, which she carried out with dedication. On May 8, 1858, Brown held a critical meeting in Chatham, Canada, to discuss his detailed plan for an attack on Harper's Ferry, Virginia. However, after the scheme was leaked to the authorities, Brown halted the operation to secure additional funds and improve his strategy, with Tubman playing a key role in these efforts and offering valuable advice for the attack. Throughout this period, Tubman balanced her roles as a speaker for abolitionist groups and taking care of her family. In early October 1859, as Brown and his team prepared for the upcoming assault, Tubman became ill in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Her decision to join Brown's raid is not clear, but by the time the ill-fated attack on Harper's Ferry took place on October 16, Tubman had recovered in New York City. Brown's raid ended in failure, resulting in his conviction, execution, and later, admiration from abolitionists as a symbol of resistance and sacrifice. Tubman expressed high regard for Brown's legacy, telling a friend, "He did more in dying than 100 men would in living." And Margaret. In the early months of 1859, Frances Adeline Seward, the spouse of Republican U.S. Senator William H. Seward, who was a staunch abolitionist, sold Harriet Tubman a 7-acre, 2.8 hectares, farm in Fleming, New York, for $1,200, which would be equivalent to $43,900 in 2023. Situated near the bustling center of the fight against slavery in Auburn, this farm served as a base for Tubman to move her parents from Canada back to the U.S. The farm became a sanctuary for her extended family and guests, providing them with safety and opportunities for a new life in the North. Shortly after acquiring the property, Tubman went back to Maryland and took with her an 8-year-old girl named Margaret, who was described as her niece, whose parents were believed to be free blacks. Margaret later reminisced about her childhood home as a place of comfort and mentioned leaving her twin brother behind. However, these accounts contradicted known information about Tubman's siblings' families, leading scholars to question the truth behind these stories and Tubman's intentions. Margaret's daughter, Alice, later described Tubman's actions as a kidnapping, highlighting the impact it had on Margaret's stable life, stating, "She had taken the child from a protected home to a place where there was nobody to care for her." Kate Larson, in her 2004 biography of Tubman, suggested that Margaret might have been Tubman's secret daughter. But later evidence indicated that Margaret was the offspring of Isaac and Mary Wolford, who were free black neighbors of Tubman's parents in Maryland, and had twins named James and Margaret. In November 1860, Tubman set out on her last mission to rescue her sister Rachel and her children, Ben and Angerine. Despite her previous efforts, she had failed to free them. Upon her return to Dorchester County, Tubman discovered that Rachel had died, and rescuing the children would require paying a bribe of $30, which Tubman did not possess at the moment. Regrettably, their fate remains a mystery. Determined not to leave empty-handed, Tubman formed another group, including the Ennals family, who were prepared to face the dangers of the journey north. Their escape was filled with obstacles, including being hidden for a long time due to unusually cold weather and a lack of food. The Ennals baby was kept quiet with paregoric as slave patrols passed by. They eventually reached the safety of David and Martha Wright's home in Auburn on December 28, 1860. American Civil War. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Harriet Tubman was convinced that it would inevitably lead to the end of slavery, a belief she gained from a profound vision. As enslaved individuals started to escape to the Union forces in large numbers, General Benjamin Butler labeled them as contraband, property taken from the Confederacy, and used them at Fort Monroe in Virginia, starting them off without pay. The number of contrabands at Fort Monroe and other Union posts quickly increased. In January 1862, Tubman was keen to help the Union effort, focusing on supporting those who had fled to camps, especially in Port Royal, South Carolina. In Port Royal, Tubman met General David Hunter, a firm believer in ending slavery who declared all contrabands in the area were free and was forming them into a black regiment. President Abraham Lincoln, wary of acting too soon to free slaves in Confederate states, criticized Hunter for his actions. Tubman disagreed with Lincoln's reaction, pushing for him to see the moral and practical reasons for freeing the slaves. God won't allow Master Lincoln to defeat the South until he does the right thing. Master Lincoln, he's a great man, and I am a poor black person, but the black person knows how to save the money and the young men. He can do it by setting the black person free. Beyond her activism, Tubman also worked as a nurse in Port Royal, using local plants to make medicines and treating soldiers with dysentery and other contagious diseases. At first, she received government rations for her work, but Tubman gave up these benefits to avoid seeming to be given special treatment. Instead, she made money by selling pies and root beer she made in the evenings. Scouting and the Combahee River Raid. When President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, Harriet Tubman saw it as a significant move forward in the fight for the freedom of African Americans, though she believed it fell short of complete emancipation. She shifted her efforts towards more direct actions aimed at defeating the Confederate armies. In the early part of 1863, using her skills in stealth travel and spying, Tubman led a group of scouts through the area near Port Royal. Following the orders of Secretary of War Edwin Stanton, her group explored new lands and collected information on the local population. She later worked closely with Colonel James Montgomery, providing essential information that helped the Union capture Jacksonville, Florida. Later that year, Tubman's strategic insights were crucial in the bold Combahee Ferry attack. She guided 3 steamboats, with African American soldiers under Montgomery's leadership, through Confederate mines on the Combahee River. Their goal was to attack several plantations along the riverbanks. Upon reaching their destination, Union soldiers set the plantations on fire, damaging infrastructure and seizing valuable resources. Tubman's spy network alerted enslaved individuals in the area to the steamboat's signals, giving them the chance to escape their captors. Tubman observed scenes of panic as people rushed to the steamboats, carrying whatever they could save in the chaos, bags of rice, squealing pigs, and babies to their parents. Despite the efforts of Confederate guards to stop the escape, the steamboats managed to rescue over 750 newly freed people to safety in Beaufort. Newspapers praised Tubman's courage and strategic brilliance in the Combahee Ferry attack, noting her role in enlisting over 100 formerly enslaved men into the Union Army. Her involvement brought back the General Tubman title given to her by John Brown. While her contributions have sometimes been overstated, Tubman is universally recognized as the first woman to command U.S. troops in combat, a role she played during this raid. In July 1863, Tubman supported Colonel Robert Gould Shaw during the attack on Fort Wagner, reportedly providing him his last meal. Reflecting on the battle later, Tubman described the loud artillery as the guns, compared the falling rain to the drops of blood, and solemnly noted the aftermath, which left behind dead men, as the harvest. For the next 2 years, Tubman continued her service for the Union Army, looking after those freed from slavery, conducting secret missions into Confederate territory, and nursing wounded soldiers in Virginia. Even after the Confederacy surrendered in April 1865, Tubman remained committed to helping those affected by the war's aftermath. Later life. After her service in the Union Army, Harriet Tubman received very little money, as her positions as a spy, scout, and nurse were not officially recognized and were only sporadically compensated. Over the course of her more than 3 years of service, she accumulated a total of $200, which is equivalent to $3,980 in 2023. Due to her unofficial roles, it was difficult to document her work, and the U.S. government took a long time to recognize her contributions. Despite her efforts to help her family and the newly freed individuals, Tubman struggled to live comfortably. In July 1865, Tubman's dreams of a formal position in the military as a nurse were shattered, leading her to return to her home in New York. On her way to New York by train in October 1865, she encountered discrimination when a conductor asked her to move to a smoking car, even though she had paid only half her fare with a military ticket. Refusing to comply, Tubman was verbally attacked and physically forced into the smoking car by the conductor and other men, which resulted in injuries. Other white passengers supported the conductor, demanding that she be removed from the train. After these difficulties, Tubman spent her later years in Auburn, New York, looking after her family and others in need. In addition to managing her farm, she took in lodgers and worked various jobs to support her elderly parents. Among those she looked after was Nelson Davis, a man who had been enslaved from North Carolina and had served in the 8th United States Colored Infantry Regiment. After moving to Auburn and working as a bricklayer, they fell in love, despite Davis being 22 years younger than Tubman. They got married on March 18, 1869, at the Central Presbyterian Church, and later adopted a daughter named Gertie in 1874. During her abolitionist years, Tubman's circle of friends and allies came together to back her. Among them, Sarah Hopkins Bradford wrote a legally approved biography titled Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman, which was published in 1869. This book, spanning 132 pages, brought Tubman around $1,200, which would be $27,500 in today's money, providing her with much-needed financial support. However, Tubman continued to face financial difficulties, and by May 1873, she had exhausted her savings to pay off the farm's mortgage. In October of that year, Tubman encountered a harsh trick. 2 African-American men claimed to have possession of a trunk filled with gold coins left behind by a former slave in South Carolina, offering to sell them at a very low price. Given the historical context of hidden treasures from the Civil War and the believable claims of such valuables, Tubman borrowed money from a friend and arranged a meeting for the late-night purchase of the gold. But the men betrayed her, rendering her unconscious with chloroform and stealing her purse, which they then replaced with rocks. Tubman was found disoriented and injured. This incident highlighted Tubman's unstable financial state, leading to renewed efforts to secure compensation for her contributions during the Civil War. In 1874, Representatives Clinton D. McDougal of New York and Jerry W. Hazelton of Wisconsin proposed a bill in Congress for a $2,000 one-time payment, which would be $53,900 in today's money, for her roles as a scout, nurse, and spy for the Union Army. Unfortunately, the bill was defeated in the Senate. In February 1880, Tubman faced another obstacle when her wooden-framed house was destroyed by fire. However, with the help of her community, she quickly obtained a new brick house to take its place. Tragedy struck once more when Tubman's husband, Nelson Davis, succumbed to tuberculosis on October 14, 1888. Following his death, Tubman became eligible for a pension under the Dependent and Disability Pension Act of 1890, which was awarded to her as Davis's widow. after providing proof of their marriage and Davis's military service records to the Bureau of Pensions. Tubman finally received a monthly pension of $8, which would be $290 in today's money, in 1895. Along with a one-time payment of $500 for the delay in approval. In December 1897, a bill was introduced in Congress by New York Congressman Sereno E. Payne to grant Tubman a monthly pension of $25, which would be $920 in today's money. Despite supporting documents and letters, some members of Congress opposed the bill, leading to a compromise. In February 1899, Tubman was awarded a monthly pension of $20, which would be $730 in today's money. Which combined her widow's pension with additional compensation for her nursing services, although her roles as a scout and spy were not officially recognized. Suffragist activism. In her later years, Tubman committed herself to fighting for the right of women to vote. When questioned by a white woman about her stance on women's suffrage, Tubman famously responded, "I endured enough to hold that belief." She became deeply engaged in the cause, collaborating with notable individuals such as Susan B. Anthony and Emily Howland. Tubman journeyed to cities like New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C., where she gave impactful addresses in favor of women's suffrage. Drawing from her experiences during the Civil War and beyond, she emphasized the historical sacrifices of women as proof of their equality with men. At the establishment of the National Federation of Afro-American Women in 1896, Tubman was chosen as the main speaker at its first gathering. Her efforts garnered renewed respect from the American media. The Woman's Era, a magazine, included Tubman in its series on Eminent Women, highlighting her important role. In 1897, a suffragist publication recorded events held in Boston to celebrate Tubman and her dedicated service to the country. Despite this acclaim, Tubman's altruistic work had impoverished her. She had to part with a cow to cover the cost of a train ticket to these events. Church, illness, and death. In the 1870s, Tubman became deeply engaged in the Thompson Memorial African Methodist Episcopal, AME, Zion Church in Auburn. By 1895, she had begun conversations with leaders of AME Zion and others about creating a Harriet Tubman home for the aged, with the goal of providing care for indigent colored people. Despite her financial difficulties, Tubman managed to buy a 25-acre, 10 hectares, farm next to her own in 1896 for $1,215, which is equivalent to $44,500 in 2023, with the intention of using it for the new facility. She named a building on the farm John Brown Hall, in memory of her late friend and fellow abolitionist. However, raising funds was challenging, and issues emerged from several mortgage loans used to pay for the purchase. Facing the risk of losing the property due to financial problems, Tubman eventually gave the property to AME Zion in 1903. The Harriet Tubman home did not begin operations until 5 years later. Tubman was upset when the church introduced a $100 entrance fee, which is equivalent to $3,390 in 2023, stating, "They make a rule that nobody should come in unless they don't have no money at all." Despite her dissatisfaction, Tubman was celebrated as the guest of honor at the home's inauguration on June 23, 1908. As Tubman grew older, the lingering effects of her childhood head injury continued to cause her discomfort. In the late 1890s, she sought relief by undergoing a surgical procedure at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. She described the operation as follows: "He sawed open my skull, and raised it up, and now it feels more comfortable." Tubman went through the surgery without any anesthesia, holding her breath as Civil War soldiers had done during amputations. By 1911, Tubman's health had significantly declined, leading to her admission to the rest home named after her. A New York newspaper reported her as ill and penniless, which sparked a renewed effort from her supporters to donate to her cause. Surrounded by her family, Tubman succumbed to pneumonia on March 10, 1913. Just before her passing, she shared a quote from the Gospel of John with those gathered. I go away to prepare a place for you. Tubman was buried with military honors at Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. Legacy. Harriet Tubman was universally acknowledged and highly esteemed throughout her life, and her status as an American hero only increased after her death. By the 1980s, she had emerged as one of the most honored figures in American history, motivating countless African Americans in their fight for equality and civil liberties. Leaders from all political backgrounds have praised her efforts. Many parks, statues, and historical landmarks throughout the United States are dedicated to Tubman's life and accomplishments. These include the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Monument and the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad National Historical Park, both situated in Maryland. In Auburn, New York, where Tubman spent much of her later years, the Harriet Tubman National Historical Park safeguards important places linked to her legacy. Outside the United States, the Salem Chapel in St. Catharines, Canada, is recognized as a National Historic Site of Canada. In Auburn, various local historical spots commemorate Tubman, such as her burial place and other important areas. Maryland features the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park and Harriet Tubman Memorial Garden, further recognizing her legacy. Moreover, the Harriet Tubman Museum is located in New Jersey, showcasing her lasting influence. Artistic portrayals. The lasting impact of Harriet Tubman can be seen in various artistic forms. Musicians such as Woody Guthrie, Wynton Marsalis, and Walter Robinson have written songs in her honor, celebrating her bravery and accomplishments. She has been the focus of operas by celebrated composers like Thea Musgrave, Nkiru Okoye, and Hilda Paredes, each showcasing different facets of her extraordinary life. Playwrights like Carolyn Gage and collaborations such as May Miller and Willis Richardson have developed plays that bring Tubman's narrative to life on stage. In the realm of literature, Tubman is at the heart of books by writers like Elizabeth Cobbs, Marcy Heidish, and Anne Parrish, each offering their own unique views on her life and influence. She also appears in novels by Terry Bisson, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and James McBride, reflecting her broad influence in the literary world. Her story has been brought to life on the small screen since a 1963 episode of The Great Adventure. And she has been depicted in recent TV shows such as The Good Lord Bird, Timeless, Underground, and A Woman Called Moses. Cynthia Erivo's performance in the 2019 film Harriet earned her critical acclaim, including an Academy Award nomination. Visual artists like Fern Cunningham, Jane DeDecker, Nina Cook-John, and Alison Sarr have crafted sculptures that embody Tubman's resilience and resolve. She has also been the subject of paintings and drawings by renowned artists such as Romari Bearden, Aaron Douglas, William Johnson, Jacob Lawrence, and Faith Ringgold, all contributing to her visual legacy. Other honors and commemorations. In 1978, Harriet Tubman was the initial African-American woman to be commemorated on a U.S. postage stamp, and she appeared on another stamp in 1995. Initiatives to swap President Andrew Jackson's image on the $20 bill for Tubman's were started in 2016, with progress being made towards achieving this objective. By 2024, the U.S. Mint introduced 3 special coins that depict various aspects of Tubman's life. Tubman's name is honored at numerous places and organizations, including many schools, roads, freeways, religious groups, social clubs, and government bodies. In 1944, the U.S. Maritime Commission named the first Liberty ship after Tubman, the SS Harriet Tubman, making it the first ship of its kind to bear a black woman's name. Historiography. Harriet Tubman aimed to write her own autobiography and become educated, but she was unable to fulfill this ambition. Instead, Sarah Hopkins Bradford gathered Tubman's personal memories, along with reports from journalists and letters from her friends, to compile Scenes from the Life of Harriet Tubman in 1868. Although modern historians have criticized this book for its imaginative liberties and biased viewpoint, it provides important insights into Tubman's personal views on her own life events. In 1886, Bradford updated the book with Harriet, the Moses of her people, which took a more ethical and literary direction and made the transition from Tubman's first-person to third-person perspective in her life stories. An additional section in 1901 added more stories about Tubman's life in an appendix. The first in-depth biography of Tubman after Bradford's was Earl Conrad's Harriet Tubman in 1943. Conrad struggled to find a publisher and faced criticism for trying to offer a more objective and detailed portrayal of Tubman's life for adult audiences. Despite the numerous fictionalized versions of Tubman's life for children, Conrad's work was distinguished by its scholarly approach. Even though Tubman remained a significant figure in history, it took 6 decades for Jean Humes to thoroughly explore her life stories in 2003. Biographies by Larson and Clinton came out in 2004, and historian Milton Cernit's 2007 book, Harriet Tubman. Myth, Memory, and History, critically evaluates the major biographies of Tubman up to that time. Great job, everyone, for taking the time to watch this video. We're sure it was both educational and captivating. Please remember to leave your comments before the clock runs out. Your input is incredibly valuable to us. If you're just joining us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel by clicking the bell icon to ensure you never miss any of our updates. And if you liked what you saw, please let us know by giving it a thumbs up. It truly aids us in reaching a wider audience like you. Spread the word among your friends and family to help spread awareness and initiate important discussions. Together, we can create a change. Thanks again for your attention. Be on the lookout for more exciting content right here soon.